Hi guys, what's up? It's your girl Anna and back with the podcast, The Fearless 20s. Thank you guys for tuning in, and today's topic is going to be about self-sabotage. This topic is so personal to me because I feel like self-sabotage has been ruining my life. Yes, and I think it's ruined a lot of people's lives, and sometimes we don't even notice it until we keep delaying projects or ignoring things until the last minute. We procrastinate, or sometimes we say we're lazy, but the truth is we're just avoiding responsibility for as long as we can because we're subconsciously or consciously sabotaging ourselves to thinking that we're not good enough to accomplish some things. If you relate, I get it because I've been there and I sometimes feel like I'm still there. So before this podcast turns into Anna's therapy session talking about my self-sabotaging journey, let's dive deep and define what self-sabotaging is. So according to Dr. Google and blogs, self-sabotaging is when people do or don't do things that either block their success or prevent them from accomplishing their goals. So it can affect our personal or professional successes, or sometimes it can affect our mental health. This can be a form of cognitive dissonance, and that's the definition for when your values and behaviors don't match. So for instance, I said I've been wanting to do this podcast for probably over a year now, and I kept delaying it because I used the excuse of being too busy, or that I'm not good enough, or that I haven't done enough research, or so many different reasons to prevent me from actually doing what I love because I'm self-sabotaging. And oftentimes what causes these self-sabotaging behaviors could be derived from a boost of dopamine when setting these goals, but when it actually comes to completing them, the fear kicks in and the sign of avoidant behavior comes back. So it's kind of like you start a project, let's say like you want to start a startup project or this new business idea. You have all this plan and research in place to actually go for it, but when you actually need to execute these plans, you kind of go ghost mode, or you go into this avoidant mode where like maybe you were consistent in like doing a project for 3 months, and then on the 4th month you kind of like put it in the back burner and pick up something else. And a lot of these tendencies could derive from the fear of failure or that perfectionism. And we often do this to protect yourself because we want to avoid that threat of actually failing from it. And I feel like personally, I've encountered a lot of this in the past few months. So a little personal anecdote to share my story, how it relates to what inspired me to talk about this today is the past, how long have I been unemployed? Since March, and it's October, so almost 7 months of unemployment, kind of. So let's backtrack. So back in March, I actually quit both of my entire freelancing journey. So I was freelancing for about a year. About a year and a few months, because I just felt like I wasn't ready to run my own business, and I wanted to perfect my skills a little bit more. And by taking on too much tasks at the same time and wearing too many hats for smaller businesses, I did not have the capacity to grow my skills and knowledge. So I was doing digital marketing for a little bit, like making websites and doing like the marketing strategies. I was literally learning on the go, and I felt like I wasn't delivering to the best of my abilities. So I kind of let go of both of the opportunities and decided to take a UX course. So even though I was voluntarily unemployed I guess I started my UX design course to get better at doing what I was doing because I felt like I can solve so many more business problems and be a better value for my clients in the future if I worked on my skills and knowledge. So since March, I've been taking UX courses, but since then, my savings were running out, and then I got a job in August. Got fired after 2.5 weeks. I can talk about that in another episode. And then I found another job like 2 weeks later, like literally a few days after I got fired. But that one was a weird one. It was to work for a startup, and the founder and I, it was a creepy, like the founder and I weren't going to get along, and I had a bad experience with him kind of hitting on me and getting too personal with my life. So that was weird. So I let go of that opportunity. And I think near the end of August is when I found another job at an art studio. And turns out it was a pretty toxic environment. I can really get deeper into like a job career episode in podcast in another episode. So now, just recently, I got a new job, finally, at a mid startup, I would say, going back into sales while I'm studying for UX design, because I underestimated the amount of workload that it would take to actually build my portfolio. I've never done anything like this. Don't really have mentors, don't really have, parents or siblings or friends that are in this. So I guess I have a few friends that I would say I kind of became not friends with. Anyways, it's getting late and I feel like I'm rambling on at this point. So coming back to this goal of these self-sabotaging behaviors, I feel like because of all of these different events that came about and my uncertainty of who I was, I think going through so many trivial moments of my career in literally in a span of 2 months made me really question like my self-worth and my self-confidence, really shattered my, confidence in what I was, who I was and what I was capable of. So I think that really prevented me from wanting to continue pursuing this podcast and YouTube route, because I think that's really amazing and I just want to share wisdom. So for the longest time, and I think for the past 2-3 weeks after I got the offer for the current job that I am really happy to be a part of, I've been self-sabotaging myself a lot, telling myself things like, oh, maybe I shouldn't dabble into another project because I'll never finish it. And even with my UX portfolio right now, I feel like I've been stuck on the same design for weeks and I've been not moving forward, even though maybe I am doing a little bit 10-30 minutes a day, even if I can every day. I'm not where I want to be. So it's kind of I put myself in a place where I'm like, hey, might as well just give up. It's another project or business idea or whatever. I'm going to fail anyways, because I've had maybe 3-4 different small business ideas that's failed in the past. So I was like, maybe this is going to be another project that I take up and I'm going to fail at. So I've been kind of using my past against myself as a self-sabotaging behavior. I don't know if this is something maybe you can relate to or could feel the same way. But with that being said, I want to tell you that you are not alone and there are actually solutions to this mess of a mind. How to prevent your self-sabotaging patterns. First step is to become more self-aware of where you're investing your time and energy. So oftentimes, I think that we like to avoid our responsibilities or things that we know we should do by creating all these different factors of distraction. So whether that be TV downstairs in your living room, or like your favorite like bakery down the street, or sometimes even you're playing with your dog could be a good distraction. No, I wouldn't say it's a distraction, it's a necessity. But you name it, like whether it's spending time with your friends or using recreational drugs or going to parties or, drinking alcohol that you don't need, and all these like dopamine hitters that often distracts you from staying focused. I think first is acknowledging and being aware of where you're becoming distracted to. And then from there is to second step, I guess, is to take that action towards eliminating these distractions, right? Easier said than done, of course, because we have temptations. We're human. We make mistakes. So how do we get to that point where we're actually taking that action towards getting rid of all that distraction? Well, hard question with an easy answer, I would say, is to clear your mind and find ways for your body physically to get you to a point where you feel motivated to get rid of these distractions. So, for instance, focusing on your goals and why you're doing certain things that you're doing. So, for example, going back to my UX design. This whole day, I feel like I was very up and down with where my distractions and my goals, and I ended up researching a little bit more after I was like, holy shit, I am becoming self-sabotaging because this is becoming an ongoing repetitive behavior in the past few weeks, and I can't keep doing this myself. So my first thing was acknowledge what's going on in my brain and get educated and type in what is self-sabotage, what causes it, what are the solutions for it, and looking at a few videos and stuff really inspired me to just kind of get back into being more self-aware instead of distracting myself with some Netflix shows. And then midday, I actually did some yoga to physically get myself to sweat, because sweating helps relieve your cortisol levels. And when you're less stressed from, overthinking or self-sabotaging or whatever you name it, all these stress factors that we have in life, we are able to focus better. So after physically getting some movement in and clearing my mind, listening to a good motivational podcast, I was ready to just realign my goals and values again to what I really want in my long term, which is to live in a van, work in a job that I really like, and building a career for myself. And I felt UX was something that would enable me to that kind of lifestyle. And then I actually had seeked out for a mentor. So if you guys let's say you're in a transition with career, or you need advice in certain industries, ADP List is a really great source. This is where you can find mentors from your local region or industries that you're working with. So if you are, let's say, in between jobs or looking for mentors to boost your career, that's a great place. It's not sponsored, but if you want to sponsor me, hit me up. So I did that, and I met with my mentor Julio, who helped me out so much on getting better clarity on where the UX career could take off. So finding inspiration and talking to the right people to reinforce your bigger goals is a really great way to get you back on track. So do not underestimate the power of your environment and the power of advice and helping one another, just like this through this podcast. So that's kind of the 3 steps that I took. So becoming, first, a little bit more self-aware than I was before. 2, taking literal physical action to get you a bit more focused and a little less stress, because I do suffer from anxiety and a lot of depression. So if I'm not physically moving, I go on a spiral. So that's important. Then 3rd is to talk it out with people that inspire you, and that is maybe where you want to be, because that's hope to get you out of self-sabotage. And so I guess that kind of brings me to my next point, which is the accountability. And I know my points are all over the place, but bear with me. It'll get better in time. is to create the accountability of taking those actions with people that you can trust. In this world, I feel like we often try to do things alone or are in competition of each other, even though there might not be like immediate competition. We are competing against like 700-800 different applicants for the same position, or we're competing to be the most attractive on social media, which is so stupid. But I know you and I both get influenced by social media. Oh my god, that dinner was good. Influencers that probably don't have realistic bodies. To even getting older, I feel like my body's changing, my mind is changing. You know, I'm gaining a little bit more fat in the midsection area. And these changes that we feel in our bodies and our minds, we're just living, and we're just, adapting to nature as how human beings should be. So sometimes I feel like we are in competition for the most unnecessary reasons. Maybe because we live in this capitalistic world. I don't know. But anyways, just to, be more in harmonious state of mind where asking for help is really, really great, especially if you have self-sabotaging behaviors. And meeting new people, I think, is also good, because oftentimes I feel like self-sabotaging begins when you feel like you've taken a step back, or that you get into this habit of not believing in yourself because maybe deep inside your inner child somewhere your parents didn't validate your accomplishments. That's huge. Things like that, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't give you these advice, but based on my research and my studies, listening to a shit ton of self-care books or self-help books and self-help care podcasts is what I learned, that, your inner child has to be comforted by your adult self at all times. And self-sabotaging behavior could also be because you do have that wound, like deep childhood wound that you haven't really catered to yet. So, if you're listening to this, I hope you can tap back into maybe some of the hurt that you felt when you were a child, and how you can comfort that child again, to be a better adult and be healthier and happier than, how you maybe been treating yourself in the past few weeks. So that is kind of my advice on how you can avoid or prevent some self-sabotage. And another few tips and tricks that I kind of pulled out of my ass just now of like how to prevent self-sabotage, is to make actionable steps that are digestible. So oftentimes, if you're anxious like myself, have this like overly high expectations for your work, you might want to step back a little bit. And this is a conversation I had with my my significant other the other day about how scaling back and setting realistic expectations on what you can actually achieve, instead of pressuring yourself to do things that maybe will burn you out in the long run. So something that's sustainable in action, but also feasible in scale. So what I mean by that is, let's say, my goal, and I'm going back to like my personal journey a lot, because I've been also reflecting a lot on how can I reduce my own personal self-sabotage, is, let's say I want to become a UX designer like everybody else in this fucking world, and I'm just getting started, and this is probably one of the most saturated markets out there. I can either let that fear stop me from trying hard and doing it my way, or I can just put blinders on and keep it going and just maybe pretend that I am the only UX designer that I am in the world, and stop comparing myself to others, rather get inspiration from others to create my own designs. So what the point of this is, instead of trying to go for a job in the next like 3 to 6 months, because a lot of places advertise getting a job like within a month, within 3 months, within 6 months of finishing the course. Like, I think that's kind of like the higher, whatchamacallit, like, the bell thing that was, it's getting late and I'm getting so tired. In the higher bell curve, or the higher percentile of people that actually get jobs within the first like 3 to 6 months. But in reality, to learn an entire program on Figma or Adobe XD, like, there's over like maybe 100 to 200 different functions and shortcuts, and learning how to do the layouts, especially if you're focusing on the UI, where you're creating an entire app and website from scratch. That is hard and challenging. So I think I had to give myself a little bit more patience and time and a realistic goal to actually produce amazing work rather than just half-assing it. So that example could apply within any goals that you're trying to achieve, whether it be creating your own business or creating a portfolio for a job if you're in the more creative industry, or freaking finishing school for that matter. I think it's good to have realistic goals on, like, what does your day-to-day look like? How do you feel? I feel like often we try to treat ourselves like robots, where we try to overdo everything and do like 10 different things in a day. But realistically, that's gonna burn you out, and then you're not gonna be happy, and you're gonna like go into this spiral of self-negative talk and negligence and self-care, and you're just gonna be miserable. I feel like those people who try to like make businesses too fast, or try to, I don't know, go into things rushed, are the people that also burn out the fastest. And it's coming from personal experience once again, so don't do that. So instead, the more realistic thing maybe could be, how many hours can you realistically dedicate to designing or learning, or getting your mind into doing the actions a day. So instead of like trying to say, oh, I'm gonna create 3 new portfolios in a month, maybe try like one really good one in the next 2 months instead, and then from there do one portfolio in 5 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks. So it's kind of like, after you hit those goals, or that little milestone of saying, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, this is how I'm gonna do it, and creating that checklist of measurable goals is a great way to start. Instead of going, I'm shooting for the moon, and then you just kind of fall down into clouds and crash. So anyways, I hope you understand that metaphor and apply that to your personal goals in life without feeling overwhelmed. If you want to be kind enough to leave a comment or share your personal experience after listening to this podcast, that'd be dope. Please do share. I want to know who's listening to my podcast. So there you have it. I hope that was informative. I hope you liked it, and this gives you a little bit boost of positivity and motivation to, going after your big goals and not being afraid to step into your fears. Because if you've been self-sabotaging for so long and leaving that project, leaving that business idea, or leaving that application, or maybe leaving the pursuits of a new relationship, or leaving a bad relationship, maybe it's time to stop the self-sabotage, because it's not going to do you any good. So if this enlightened anything in your mind, in your heart, I hope you can share it with your friends and family that could also benefit from this podcast. I hope you enjoyed. It's getting late and I really want to sleep. Thank you guys. I tried my best. I think the next podcast will be a lot better. And if there's anything you would like me to talk about, please also leave it in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and stop the self-sabotage and begin the self-sabotage.